Good Tuesday afternoon, everybody. Welcome back down to my library, and welcome to the start of a brand new month. So, as per usual, never got a chance to do any of my wrap-up videos yet, but this afternoon, I'm going to have my March book wrap-up. And then later on tonight, I'll definitely film my movies that I watched in March. So I decided to do this one first because it's going to be very easy and laid back. Like all my other videos are, but you get the drift. So let's go ahead and get into this thing. I read 7 books in March. I read 3 Audible, 3 Kindle, and 1 physical. So, if you've seen my wrap-ups, I go in the order that I read them. So, let's go ahead and get started. And this first one started off with a bang. The first book I officially completed in March was Blankie by Kealan Patrick Burke, and this was a Kindle read. This story was very, very well done, and it's really short, so it's essentially about this couple who recently lost their baby to a mysterious death. Well, we learn later in the story that the kid had this blanket that was kind of like supernatural. And there's a little bit of spoilers here, so bear with me. Later on in the story, that same blanket actually kills this man's wife. And now the man that we're following is accused of killing his wife and daughter. So the story was very depressing and actually very dark. And it was a fantastic little novella. I gotta tell you, I read 2 more stories by Kealan Patrick Burke, and they did not disappoint. So this first one that I read, I gave this 5 stars. So that was the first book I read. The next book I read, and give me a round of applause, I finally read Dune by Frank Herbert. Yes, I read that. So this was on Audible, and this is like the quintessential sci-fi epic. And it's essentially about the Atreides house falling into corruption by the Harkonnens. The Harkonnens destroy House Atreides, and Paul is forced into the desert to train and exact his revenge on the Harkonnens. But he also meets a woman that he falls in love with, and her name is Shawnee. But when this thing wraps up, he actually goes toe-to-toe with Fade Rotha von Harkonnen, which is his nemesis, and he's also a teenager, so it's literally a fight to the death. This story, I can go on for maybe an hour just talking about it, but I'm just going to keep it simple here. because it's a lot. And the audiobook was 21 hours. But I listened to it in double speed, so it took me half of the time to get through it. So I really did enjoy this book. It is not everyone's cup of tea, but me not being a big sci-fi reader, it kind of makes me want to actually explore other sci-fi fantasy epics. And I gotta tell you, I got quite a few that I have in mind, but Dune, having only read the first one, I don't know if I want to go through like 26 others. But I really did enjoy this one a lot. And it's probably in talks of being my favorite book of the year so far. So obviously, I gave Dune by Frank Herbert 5 stars. The next one I read was Sour Candy by Kealan Patrick Burke. This was also on my Kindle. And this one was an interesting one. This one was about a man who met this woman in like a mall, and he's not sure if this woman was okay. But the woman had a kid with her, and very soon in the story, that same woman gets into an accident with this guy, and all of a sudden, this kid is on his front porch claiming to be his son. So, this one was very creepy, and it kind of like reminded me of The Omen a little bit. But this kid had like this sour candy called Jacques, whatever it was, and it was kind of like a hallucinogenic drug that transported this dude into like this weird fantasy world. Then all of a sudden you have like all of these creatures after him. The ending was a little fantastical, but I really did enjoy the story quite a bit. So this one was another 5 stars. So I'm starting off pretty strong here. Dune took a lot out of me though, so I didn't read much of anything. So Dune was like my biggest book that I read this month. But continuing on, my second audiobook was Malibu Burning by Lee Goldberg. And this was Sharp and Walker #1. It's kind of like a detective series. And it was just about like these 2 guys trying to solve an arson case in Malibu. The story was okay. And, yeah. I gave this 3 stars. Okay. The final audiobook I read in March was Dolls by Matt Shaw. And this was an extreme horror novella. And I gotta say, like, 85% of this book, I was lost. But the ending kind of like made the book better. So what I remember, it features this family who is broken because of the loss of their dad, and the daughter is being SA'd by her stepdad, and the brother has like nothing to do with any of this, and he's kind of out of the picture most of this novel. But it like flips back in the past and the present. So when this thing wraps up, the daughter's mother finds out that she's pregnant, but the daughter's name is Zoe, I believe. She doesn't want to give up the fact that her stepdad impregnated her. So she kills the stepdad, then accidentally slits her mom's throat, and then she offs herself as well. But that's how this thing ends. I forgot to mention what dolls actually means. She was so distraught about being pregnant that she grave robbed babies and kept them as her own. Very dark stuff, but this one was kind of confusing, but the ending made it so much better. I originally wanted to give this like 2 stars, but I bumped it up a star simply because of the ending. Really rough. And the next book I read was The Tent, Kealan Patrick Burke. So this one was also on my Kindle. And this one was about a couple who get lost in the woods and they lose their son in the process. So they come across this tent that is not a tent at all. It's some creature that just like wreaks havoc. This one was a solid story, but not as good as Blankie or Sour Candy. But I really did enjoy this one as well. But I gave this one 4 stars. And finally, believe it or not, I still do read physical books. Here's my only physical book that I read, and it ain't Stephen King. That book is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. I finally read this thing, and holy shnikes. This thing is very rough, but it starts off kind of boring in a way. It's because of the writing style, I gotta say. But once we got into like the psychotic side of Patrick Bateman, I was like enamored with this novel. It was messed up. So essentially, Patrick Bateman is a Wall Street playboy who is friends with everybody by day, but by night, he becomes a psychotic serial killer, and he abducts call girls. And some of the deaths in here are very graphic. I don't even want to repeat any of them, but there is a scene in here with a rat that just made me go, ugh. But it follows the movie very well, but I think the movie is a lot better. I mean, when it got to like the infamous Paul scene, I significantly like that part better in the movie, because like his whole monologue talking about like Huey Lewis in the news ain't even in this novel, but there's like 3 separate chapters that have Genesis, Whitney Houston, and of course Huey Lewis in the news. Those were interesting chapters, but I don't think they really had anything to do with the story per se. But the last half of this thing is just complete chaos. I mean, this dude just snaps and just obliterates people, no matter if they're innocent or not. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. But if I'm going to be frank, I would just round this up to 5 stars. It's a good novel, but all of the descriptions got super annoying. I mean, flip on like any page here. I'm going to find one. Okay, well, here is an example, and it's just many examples. I'm just going to read it from here. But anyway, there's a bunch of clothing descriptions, and here's one that I saw. Deborah is wearing a subtly striped double-breasted wool suit by Canale Milano, a cotton shirt by Bill Blass, a Many Glen plaid woven silk tie by Bill Blass' signature, and he's holding a Missoni Umo raincoat. Just descriptions like that just got on my nerves. But I say when the Paul Owen chapter comes up, that's when this book gets significantly better. But I did enjoy my time with this, despite all of the clothing descriptions. And I finally conquered American Psycho. Yay. So, those are the 7 books that I read in March. Let me know down below how many y'all have read, and if you read any of these. But otherwise, that's all I got for this video. And later on tonight, I will definitely film my movies I watched in March. So stay tuned for that. And this weekend, finally have The First Omen and Monkey Man. And I'll definitely have some reviews on those 2. But that's all I got for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you later. Adios. Peace.